Next, Mr. Chameleon and the bought and paid for murder case. Tonight, we again present the famous Mr. Chameleon of Central Headquarters in his most famous cases of crime and murder. Brought to you by the makers of genuine Bayer Aspirin. Mr. Chameleon, as you all know, is the famous and dreaded detective of Central Police Headquarters who frequently uses a disguise or impersonation to confuse the criminals he is tracking down. In tonight's case, he appears in a particularly interesting disguise which the audience will at all times recognize. Tonight we give you Mr. Chameleon in the bought and paid for murder case. Picture, if you can, a home where all is luxury, where the golden touch of great wealth is revealed on every side. A home of which the average person on the street would say, "Give me what the people living in that house have, and I'll never complain in life again." But unfortunately, things don't work out that way. And as our story opens, we find Louisa Constant sitting in her beautiful dining room. Louisa feels no happiness as she gazes at her slim and handsome young husband, Cyril. She looks every day her 50-odd years, and she regards Cyril grimly. He smiles at her and says,
"Let me put a bit of sugar in your coffee, Louisa, dear."
Thank you, no. I'd rather get it from the kitchen, Cyril. You think I'm a fool? Well, I'm not. Just remember that.
Oh, for heaven's sake, Louisa, what's this all about?
Did you ring for me, Mrs. Constant?
Yes, Marie. Bring some fresh sugar from the kitchen, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Louisa, will you please tell me what this is all about?
As if you didn't know. I'm not letting you put anything sugar or anything in what I eat or drink. You've been trying to poison me.
Oh, now, really?
Oh, don't take that attitude, as though I were a child or a senile old woman.
Darling, can't you forget your age? I can.
You don't say. Is that why you've been having an affair with Ruth Garden? You and pretty Ruth, who'd also like to see me dead. I know the two of you want me out of the way.
Louisa, this is ridiculous.
Now, you listen to me, Cyril. I bought you and I paid for you, and I'm going to keep you. You were nothing but a cheap clerk in my bank when I met you. A clerk who'd wanted money and who stole that money. If I hadn't personally paid off that money you stole, you'd be in jail right this minute.
But I've always been grateful. And I married you, didn't I?
Yes, and we'll stay married until death do us part. I'll never give you a divorce.
Shh, here comes Marie.
Here's your sugar, Mrs. Constant. And your sister is on the telephone.
Tilly, what does she want? All right, I'll talk to her. Put some sugar in my coffee, Marie. I'll be back in a second.
Yes, Mrs. Constant. 1 teaspoonful, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, I'm not going to bother with Tilly now. Go and tell her I'll call her later, Marie.
Yes, Mrs. Constant.
Why should I let my coffee get cold for Tilly? Lukewarm as it is, it tastes strange.
Louisa, stop it. You're imagining things. Really, this is dreadful.
I'm not imagining things. That coffee did taste strange. There's a burning sensation in my throat. Cyril, I've been poisoned, just as I knew I'd be.
And a little later at Central Police Headquarters, we find the Commissioner of Police talking to Mr. Chameleon, the great and dreaded detective, and the Commissioner is saying,
"So, Louisa Constant is dead, Chameleon. Apparently poisoned, murdered. She was a powerful woman, and she abused her power. A lot of people hated the old battle axe.
She inherited all her money from her first husband, didn't she? Noah Osmond, the mining king.
Yeah, that's right, Chameleon. She was fabulously rich and just as arrogant as she was wealthy.
Well, that can be a bad combination, Commissioner. What about her personal life?
It was a mess.
Oh?
Her second husband, Cyril Constant, was 25 years younger than she was. Figure it out for yourself.
I'd say that always adds up to trouble. Okay, Commissioner, I'll get up there immediately. Sounds to me like an ugly setup. Perfect breeding ground for murder.
So, shortly after, we find Mr. Chameleon in Louisa's magnificent home, examining the fatal cup of coffee. And he is saying to Cyril Constant, the murdered woman's young husband, who is standing beside him,
It was poison, all right, Mr. Constant. Very quick, deadly poison. Concealed in the sugar, probably. Who put the sugar in her coffee?
The maid, Marie, Mr. Chameleon. I can't believe she'd kill my wife, Louisa.
Someone did, Mr. Constant. By the way, you are the same Cyril Constant, aren't you, who was accused of stealing bank funds a few years ago?
I see you have a first-rate memory, Mr. Chameleon. But those charges against me were dropped, so why bring it up now?
Your wife has been murdered, Mr. Constant. In the course of my investigations, I'll have to bring up a great many things. About the maid, you say that she brought in the fatal sugar. Did anyone else have access to that sugar, beside yourself?
Yes, Mr. Chameleon. Louisa's sister, Tilly Martin. She certainly knew her way around this house. I've often seen her in the pantry where the sugar was kept.
Was she here today?
She certainly was. Late this afternoon.
What was she doing here? She married?
Tilly? No. But she was engaged to Noah Osmond, Louisa's first husband. And Louisa stepped in and took him away from her. And I mean, took him away, just to show she could do it.
How do you know this, Mr. Constant?
Because my wife, Louisa, boasted of it. She didn't even mind admitting that she lied to her first husband, Noah, about her sister Tilly. Nothing mattered except that Louisa got the best of Tilly.
Yet the sisters remained friends?
Tilly had no choice, Mr. Chameleon. She's not young anymore, and she's poor and alone. She had to come to Louisa occasionally for money.
Well, she must have hated that, under the circumstances.
And how she hated it, Mr. Chameleon. She usually left this house in tears. I've always felt sorry for her.
No doubt, yes, since you were both in the same boat financially. Nevertheless, it was the maid Marie who gave your wife the poisoned sugar. I'll have Detective Sergeant Arnold send the girl in here. Dave?
Yes, Mr. Chameleon. You ready to talk to the maid?
Right. Send her in, Dave, please. That'll be all for now, Mr. Constant. Of course, the maid had no reason for hating your wife,
Well,
Did she have a reason, Mr. Constant?
in a way. Louisa discharged her today and gave the poor girl a terrible tongue-lashing.
Mr. Constant, why did you have to tell that?
Now, Marie.
What are you trying to do to me? Make me look guilty?
My dear Marie, Mr. Chameleon is a very smart detective. He would have quickly found out that my wife, Louisa, fired you. Call on me if you need me, Mr. Chameleon.
You may count on it, Mr. Constant. Marie, tell me the truth. Why were you fired?
I can't tell you, Mr. Chameleon. I can't, that's all.
What do you mean, can't? You mean you don't know?
That's it. Yes, that's it. She had no reason to fire me.
Did she give you references, Marie?
No, she refused.
So the murdered woman made it pretty hard for you to get another job.
Mr. Chameleon, I'm not guilty.
Mr. Constant seems to think that you might be.
Why? What did he tell you besides saying I was fired? What else did he tell you?
Why were you fired, Marie?
I don't know.
Why were you fired?
I said I didn't know. As for Cyril Constant, he's been having an affair for years with a girl named Ruth Garden. Why don't you question her?
I will. Thank you for giving me her name. How did you know about her, Marie?
I heard Mr. and Mrs. Constant quarreling, Mr. Chameleon. His wife knew about the affair. She was afraid, Mr. Chameleon. She was terribly afraid.
You seem very much afraid yourself, Marie, of something or other. That'll be all for now. Send in Detective Sergeant Arnold, please.
Yes, Mr. Chameleon. And I have nothing to be afraid of.
The lady doth protest too much.
Did you say something, Mr. Chameleon?
Just quoting Shakespeare, Dave. Get in touch with Louisa Constant's lawyer. Find out the terms of her will immediately. And then call me at the home of Miss Ruth Garden, a young woman that I am extremely anxious to meet. Miss Ruth Garden?
Yes?
I'm Chameleon of Central Police Headquarters. I've come to question you about the murder of Cyril Constant's wife, Louisa.
Question me? But why? I had nothing to do with it.
I see that you're not surprised to hear that she was murdered. Well, you couldn't have read about it in the papers or heard it on the radio yet, so Cyril Constant must have called you.
Well, yes, why not? We're old friends.
I'm afraid you're much more than that, Miss Garden. You and Cyril were in love. His wife, Louisa, knew it. By the way, this is a very luxurious apartment. What do you do for a living, Miss Garden?
You have no right to ask such questions.
I'm afraid I have. Does Constance support you?
Yes, he wants to marry me.
And you want to marry him?
Of course I do. I've stuck by him for years. He's darn well going to marry me.
His wife, Louisa, refused to divorce him. Only now his wife is dead, so he is free to marry you. Only I wonder.
What? Are you intimating that Cyril and I planned the murder, Mr. Chameleon?
No, I was just wondering if he'd marry you now, Miss Garden.
What do you mean? You don't mean that he'd marry Marie, not that cheap little fool he got the job for.
Aha, so that's the way it was. Cyril Constant got Marie a job as a maid in his house. He was tiring of you and fell for this girl.
Oh, they didn't tell you that?
Only a jealous rival would have told me, Miss Garden. Well, no wonder Louisa Constant fired the girl.
Oh, Mr. Chameleon, I shouldn't have said anything about it. I still love Cyril.
You mean you still want to marry him, Miss Garden? Especially now that he's inherited millions from his wife. You'd overlook Marie or anyone else, and you... Excuse me, please. I'll take that. I believe it's for me. Hello?
Mr. Chameleon, Dave Arnold.
Yes, Dave. Did you see Louisa Constant's lawyer?
I just left his office, and wait till you hear this. Cyril, the young husband, doesn't get a cent. It all goes to her sister, Tilly.
What?
Noah Osmond, the murdered woman's first husband, apparently was still in love with Tilly when he died. When he left his fortune to Louisa, it was with the proviso that at her death, all the money would then go to her sister, Tilly.
Well, that is very interesting. Okay, Dave, go and fetch Sister Tilly and take her to the Constant home. I'm going there in half an hour. Well, Miss Garden, I have a little surprise for you. Cyril is penniless. His sister-in-law, Tilly, got everything.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Then that means she's guilty, doesn't it? Anyone might commit murder for that amount of money.
Including yourself and Cyril.
I didn't mean that.
You said anyone might commit murder for that amount of money. And up to a minute ago, you thought that money might be yours and Cyril's.
Mr. Chameleon and the bought and paid for murder case continues in just a moment. If you ever take anything to relieve an ordinary headache, remember this about genuine Bayer aspirin. Its single active ingredient is so gentle to the system that mothers give it even to small children on their doctor's advice. Now, this is important, for it means that Bayer aspirin is something you can take with complete confidence. It means that besides fast relief, Bayer aspirin also offers you the dependable relief that's important to your health. For Bayer aspirin is not only ready to go to work in 2 seconds, but also has an unmatched record of use by millions of normal people without ill effect. So don't experiment when you're in pain. Take no chances with drugs that have not been proved by years of successful use. For the 2 most important kinds of relief, use something you know is completely dependable, genuine Bayer aspirin. When you buy, ask for it by its full name, Bayer aspirin, not just for aspirin alone. Get the 100-tablet bottle and you get Bayer aspirin tablets for less than a penny apiece. And now back to Mr. Chameleon and the bought and paid for murder case. There are many suspects in the poison murder of Louisa Constant, 59-year-old Louisa with her young, handsome husband. Suspects in the case are Ruth Garden, who is in love with Louisa's young husband, Marie, the maid in the house, the young husband himself, Cyril, and Louisa's spinster sister, Tilly. As Act 2 opens, we are again in the murdered woman, Louisa Constant's house. Mr. Chameleon confronts with interest the tight-lipped, quiet spinster sister, Tilly, who stands facing him, and he says,
You're Louisa Constant's sister, Tilly, aren't you? I'm Chameleon of Central Police Headquarters. We've been looking for you.
You looked in the wrong place. You'd have found me, Mr. Chameleon, if you'd come directly to this house. My house now. I own everything in it.
You sound quite triumphant, Miss Tilly.
And why shouldn't I be? I've lived in poverty for years while Louisa lived here on the money she got from her first husband. The man she took away from me. Noah Osmond.
Noah certainly remembered you handsomely in his will, Miss Tilley. In the event of your sister's death, he has arranged for you to inherit everything. Her poor second husband, Cyril, doesn't get a cent.
Don't call Cyril her poor husband. Cyril was a devil. She was deathly afraid of him. She knew all about his women. She was sure he was going to poison her.
Did your sister Louisa tell you this?
She certainly did. She knew that Cyril wanted to be rid of her.
And you didn't, of course, Tilly.
Cyril!
You didn't want to be rid of her. You who stood to inherit a vast fortune.
Mr. Chameleon, Cyril has been eavesdropping.
No, Miss Tilley. I told him to stand there and listen. You might not have talked so freely if he'd been in plain sight. And he made a very good point. You were your sister's heir.
But I wasn't sure about that, Mr. Chameleon. Noah said something before he died, but I truly didn't know I was going to get all of it.
Did you, Cyril?
Yes, Mr. Chameleon. I should have mentioned it before. Of course I knew. My wife, Louisa, told me that Tilly would get everything.
So you had no financial reason for killing your wife. But the fact remains that you hated her, Cyril.
He did.
You're wrong, both of you. I didn't hate Louisa. She gave me too much in the way of comfort and luxury.
Well, you're honest at least, Cyril.
Why not? We made a bargain, Mr. Chameleon. She bought and paid for me. Both of us understood it. We were even rather fond of each other in a way.
But you had other girls.
My dear Tilly, there was 25 years difference in Louisa's and my age, don't forget. Naturally, poor Louisa was bound to be jealous. Naturally, too, I was attracted to younger women. But there's a great difference between having an affair with some girl and murdering one's wife.
Quite logical, yes. I get your point, Cyril. And your wife did tell you that you would inherit no money.
Absolutely, Mr. Chameleon.
Mr. Chameleon. Mr. Chameleon.
No, it isn't true.
Mr. Chameleon.
Yes, Dave, what's the matter?
The poison that killed Louisa Constant. Here it is. A whole envelope of it.
But it doesn't belong to me. I don't know how it got there.
Got where, Marie? In your room?
Yes, Mr. Chameleon. It was hidden in a bureau drawer in Marie's room.
Someone must have put it there. It isn't mine. This woman, Miss Tilly, she was in my room.
That right, Miss Tilley?
I went through the whole house. It's mine now, Mr. Chameleon. It belongs to me. But I certainly didn't plant any poison in that maid's room.
And I had no reason for killing Mrs. Constant just because she fired me.
She fired you, Marie, because she had discovered that you were one of her husband's girlfriends. It's quite possible that you expected him to inherit her money.
No.
Take her away, Dave. Turn her over to Detective Foley. I want her held at headquarters for further questioning. Then you join me here in the library.
In the library?
Yes, Miss Tilley. You may now be the owner of this magnificent house, but your sister Louisa's murder is still unsolved, and I intend to solve it. And for reasons of my own, I want to look over the library.
Mr. Chameleon?
Yes, Dave?
Well, for Pete's sake, what are you doing in the library fireplace? Do you expect to find some more of that poison hidden in there?
No, but I'll admit I think there's more of it around. We haven't got the full answer yet, Dave. Not by any means. Has Marie the maid been talking at headquarters?
Screaming her head off.
No.
Saying over and over that she didn't kill Louisa Constant. Like your friend, Mr. Shakespeare, said, she makes too darn much noise about it.
Mm-hmm. Stupid girl, Dave, to hide that poison in her room. Extremely stupid. Exceptionally stupid. Now, about this fireplace.
What about the fireplace, Mr. Chameleon?
I'm plugging it up. And then, my dear Dave, you are going to burn something in it, which will cause a lot of smoke. Then, when we've established that the thing is a fire hazard, I shall turn up tomorrow as a man from the building inspector's office.
You mean in disguise?
Uh-huh. As a Mr. Petty. Mr. Petty from the building inspector's office. I shall examine every room in this house that has a fireplace, and no one will be watching me, as they watch me now. Why should anyone be afraid of Mr. Petty from the building inspector's office, Dave? It's a perfect disguise.
And so the next morning, we find Mr. Chameleon approaching the Constant house with Detective Sergeant Dave Arnold. And he is saying to Dave, in the voice of his disguise,
You think I look like someone named Petty, do you?
So help me, every time you use that voice, it makes me jump, Mr. Chameleon. I never expect it. And you sure don't look like Chameleon the cop, I'll say that.
Good. I have a hunch that our friend Miss Tilly, providing she's there, will be rather difficult to fool. Okay, Dave. I'll go it alone from here. And while I'm going over the house in my role of building inspector, you check back with Louisa Constance's lawyer once more.
Right, Mr. Chameleon.
Yes?
My name is Petty, from the building inspector's office. You the lady of the house?
No, I'm not. I just answered the door. The maid's gone.
I have a report that you have a defective chimney. I'm here to inspect it.
Who are you and what do you want? And what are you doing here, Ruth Garden? How dare you come into my house this way?
Cyril still happens to be living here, Miss Tilly.
Don't use my first name.
Miss Tilly Martin, then. And I'm simply here in your precious house to help Cyril pack and get out.
Then go and help him. I want Cyril out of here in an hour. Murderers.
You're the one who's the murderer, Tilly Martin.
Really, I must say
All right, now who are you?
My name is Petty. I'm from the building inspector's office.
You can't come in.
Dear lady, it's been reported that you have a defective chimney. Since that means a fire hazard, I must inspect your fireplaces.
I suppose the police reported that to you. They can't find my sister's murderer, but they can find a fire hazard. When that Mr. Chameleon was here, the fireplace in the library started smoking.
Dear lady...
You can't come in. This is my home, and you can't come in.
Here is an order from the inspector himself. I got to see that chimney and make a report on it.
Oh, all right. Very well. Come in, but be quick about it. This is my house, and I want to be alone in it.
Now, where's this library? Only take a little while.
It is now less than an hour later, and Mr. Chameleon once more appears in the house of Louisa Constant, but this time no longer in disguise, but as himself, and with Detective Sergeant Dave Arnold, who is saying,
Did you get what you were looking for in your disguise, Mr. Chameleon?
I'd say it was successful, Dave. Now, you're sure that Louisa Constance's lawyer will swear to what you just told me about the will?
Absolutely, Mr. Chameleon.
Good. That's all we needed. And I see the lady of the house is waiting at the door to greet us. Good afternoon, Miss Tilly.
What's this all about, Mr. Chameleon? Why did you insist that I be home at this hour? And that horrible Cyril and Ruth Garden be here, too? First, that man from the building inspector's office walks in on me, and then you, Mr. Chameleon. Really, it's too much.
You'll soon have all the privacy that you want, Miss Tilly. Well, Miss Garden, and Cyril, I see all your bags are here, packed.
I'm just about ready to leave, except for something in this room, which I intend to take with me.
Like this vase, for instance? This very handsome Chinese vase?
Yes. How did you know that was mine, Mr. Chameleon?
Then it is.
It's one of my most prized possessions. Here, I'll take it from you.
No. Let me look at it a moment, Cyril. It's a very beautiful thing.
Oh, don't drop it. Louisa gave it to me. It's one of my most prized possessions.
Yes, so you said. By the way, Cyril, why did you tell me that you knew that your sister-in-law Tilly would inherit all of your murdered wife's money?
I did know. Louisa told me herself.
That is not true, Cyril. Detective Sergeant Arnold went to your wife, Louisa's lawyer, a few hours ago. The lawyer said that on the very day of your wife's murder, you came to him and tried to find out about the will.
The man's lying.
Oh, no. And your wife gave him strict instructions not to tell you the terms of the will under any conditions.
Cyril, you...
Be quiet, Tilly. Mr. Chameleon, what do you expect to prove by this? And what are you doing with my vase?
What am I doing with it?
Yes. Leave it alone.
I'm sorry, Cyril. I'm deeply interested in this vase. It seems to have a false bottom.
Let me have it.
A false bottom that comes off when you pull it.
No, give it to me. Give it to me, I say.
Is there something in this false bottom?
Yes, you're sure to find it. It's a piece of paper with a very private message on it. It has nothing to do with you, Mr. Chameleon. It's very personal and private.
I'm sure it is, Cyril. Only that piece of paper was removed from the vase earlier today.
What?
Mr. Petty, the building inspector, who happened to be myself, removed it. It was a packet of poison, Cyril. The poison that killed your wife. I just wanted you to identify the vase as yours and admit that you knew there was a piece of paper in it.
Cyril, you killed her.
You killed my sister.
Yes. I did what neither of you had the courage to do. I killed Louisa because she was a tyrant and because I wanted her money. There it is, Mr. Chameleon.
Yes, there it is. I arrest you, Cyril Constant, for the murder of your wife. From the very beginning, you seemed to be guilty, and you were. Doesn't always work out that way.
And with these words, Mr. Chameleon concludes the bought and paid for murder case. The part of Mr. Chameleon was played tonight by Carl Swenson. It's only natural that when you have an ordinary headache, you want fast relief. And to find out how quickly Bayer aspirin is ready to go to work, all you need do is test it in a glass of water. What happens to a Bayer aspirin tablet in the glass also happens in your stomach. And the speed with which it disintegrates indicates the speed with which it's ready to go to work. Now, when you make this test, you'll see that Bayer aspirin tablets start disintegrating almost instantly, are actually ready to go to work in 2 seconds. Hence, they provide remarkably fast relief. So when you need something to relieve pain, be sure of how quickly it will act. Be sure with Bayer aspirin. When you buy, ask for Bayer aspirin, not just for aspirin alone. Get the 100-tablet bottle, and you get Bayer aspirin tablets for less than a penny apiece. Listen next Wednesday night at this same time for Mr. Chameleon, the man of many faces, in The Case of Murder and the Scar-Faced Man. The part of Mr. Chameleon is played by Carl Swenson, with dialogue by Marie Baumer from the original story by Frank and Ann Hummert. Music directed by Victor Arden. Your announcer is Howard Claney.
You probably have heard or read about the remarkable discovery that actually cuts down tooth decay, ammoniated tooth powder. Today, Dr. Lyons, America's favorite tooth powder, is available in this ammoniated form. Based on a formula developed by University of Illinois scientists, it destroys bacteria Lactobacillus acidophilus, which cause cavities. Thus, it not only cuts down tooth decay, but pain, worry, and expense as well. So, to reduce tooth decay, to have sounder, healthier, handsomer teeth, use ammoniated Dr. Lyons tooth powder. Both regular Dr. Lyons tooth powder and new ammoniated Dr. Lyons are at all drug and toilet goods counters.
Listen for Mr. Chameleon in The Case of Murder and the Scar-Faced Man next Wednesday night at this time. Hear the story of a super crime syndicate, one of Mr. Chameleon's most thrill-packed cases, next Wednesday night at this time. Mr. Chameleon in The Case of Murder and the Scar-Faced Man. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.